The patrons have spoken once again, and now we have Politoed. This mini toad frog has been around since it was introduced in the second generation as an alternative evolution to Poliwhirl. It's known both for being difficult to obtain, needing to be traded while holding a King's Rock, and for having one of the most commonly misspelled names in Pokemon. It's T-O-E-D, not T-O-A-D. Today we'll examine if Politoed was able to do some frogging around in the competitive scene. So, how good was Politoed actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Politoed was sadly unable to make any impact on OU in its debut generation. The one thing it could do was sweep with growth, and at this role, it was wholly, entirely outclassed by Vaporeon, and thus it dropped to UU. With its straightforward bread and butter growth set, it was a solid sweeping threat with great longevity that couldn't be easily preyed upon while sleeping, thanks to Surf's fantastic coverage as its sole attack, letting it safely use Rest and Sleep Talk. Though if this wasn't an issue, it could use Ice Beam for Blossom, who was the only truly safe counter besides Lantern. While these two were fine Pokemon, they were not as easy to fit on teams as the tier staples were, and the easier to fit of the two, Blossom, had only 8 Moonlight PP, which often disappeared quickly and made Politoed a threat in the long run. Since Politoed was often at high health, it could also be used to fend off the dangerous queen of the tier, Nidoqueen, since even if it was asleep, it would be fine by sleep talking Rest or Surf, and its natural bulk allowed it to take a hit from basically anything in a pinch. It wasn't impenetrable, but it wasn't easy to KO either. It could survive a Magneton Thunder with health to spare. Politoed was unique in posing an immediate threat to many of the tier's common defensive walls, such as Hypno and the Slow Twins, while not being at all threatened by their moves. This was something the tier's other offensive Pokemon such as Dodrio, Scyther, and Electabuzz could not do. It was usually necessary to stall these Pokemon, and thus Politoed's ability to easily turn them into offensive momentum was invaluable. Politoed wasn't just restricted to using growth though. It actually did have access to the incredibly dangerous combination of Belly Drum and Lovely Kiss. And if you're wondering why it didn't use the latter alongside growth, it's because the combination was unfortunately illegal, as both Lovely Kiss and Belly Drum were New York Pokemon Center event moves. Anyway, despite being seemingly outclassed at this by its cousin Poliwrath, who boasted more attack and fighting stab over it, which do go hand in hand with Belly Drum sweeping, Politoed was able to differentiate itself by virtue of its greater defensive ability, allowing it to keep the sweep going against more Pokemon. Its lack of a psychic weakness was huge, meaning it didn't fear Hypno or the Slow Twins at all, while its significantly higher special defense meant it took far less from Nidoqueen's Thunder and Haunter's Thunderbolt, and its lack of a flying weakness meant Dodrio and Scyther had a tougher time picking it off as well. The issue with this Politoed set was that it relied heavily on being in pristine condition so it could Belly Drum, which meant it couldn't make use of its defensive capabilities, and as such it was more difficult to fit on teams. That said, the payoff could be explosive, and it definitely had its place. Also, anyone looking to stonewall what they thought was growth Politoed with Blossom or Lantern was in for a nasty surprise when it revealed itself to be Belly Drum. Overall, Politoed was a great Pokemon in GSC UU. It fulfilled a unique niche of being one of the most dangerous sweeps on both ends of the spectrum, while not fearing the most common defensive Pokemon and generally being difficult for much of the metagame to bring down. Politoed still stood no chance in Advanced OU. It lost growth in the generational shift, but even if it had kept it, it would have been ludicrously outclassed by Suicune's newfound Calm Mind. While defensively, it was outdone by not just Suicune, but also Milotic and once again Vaporeon. And this time Vaporeon's got Wish. Even more unfortunately, Politoed didn't do anything of note in UU. It also lost Lovely Kiss with the generational shift, and the awful Hypnosis was not a suitable replacement, meaning Drum Sweeping was going to be quite difficult to pull off, especially with all the priority meant for Select-Berry users, limiting the KOs Politoed would get. One was better off using a more consistent sweeper that didn't have as hard a time setting up and wasn't so easy to halt, such as Pinsir, Feraligatr, or Tentacruel. Defensively, Politoed didn't offer anything particularly unique. Blastoise and its Rapid Spin were far more consistently valuable. And the final nail in the coffin is Politoed not being considered NU, where it would likely have been quite decent. So as you can see, Gen 3 was not at all kind to our froggy friend. The 4th generation saw no improvement to Politoed's status. In fact, the contrary. It was a bland, generic bulky water that had absolutely nothing to distinguish itself from the likes of the far superior Milotic in both OU and UU, as well as each tier's numerous other waters. Politoed dropped to NU, where it was at least decent there, if mostly on the unspectacular side. The tier's de facto bulky water was Slowking, whose extensive move pool gave it instant recovery and offensive threat potential, while its secondary Psychic typing gave it neat resistances to fighting and Psychic. Now, unfortunately, Slowking also saddled with a nasty Dark weakness that was often exploited by Skunktank's Pursuit, which then left Slowking's team vulnerable to the bevy of threats it was meant to check, most notably Charizard. Politoed's best use was as a bulky water that wasn't threatened by Pursuit, though it was not able to pose a threat in return, as it didn't have instant recovery and couldn't check fighting types. But it was able to handle Charizard decently, so long as it didn't switch directly into HP Grass more than once. It wasn't a flashy niche, or even a particularly necessary one, as Slowking was generally good enough to where players were willing to play around its Pursuit weakness in order to reap its other numerous benefits, while Politoed offered little interesting utility outside of Encore and Refresh having occasional use. This state of Politoed was as good as it got in the 4th generation, which was quite depressing, but fear not, everything was about to change. Now finally, the big one. The importance of Politoed receiving Drizzle from Generation 5's Dream World cannot be overstated. With permanent weather on their side, rain teams went from being a gimmick to being defining in OU. It fueled a ton of incredibly powerful strategies, with the most obvious being boosted water attacks from Swift Swimmers. These were so overwhelmingly fast and powerful that Swift Swim was quickly banned from being used on the same team as Drizzle. Kingdra, Kabutops, and friends were absurdly difficult to deal with, even beating down the amazing new Ferrothorn. And speaking of Ferrothorn, Ferrothorn was also a rain staple due to its reduced fire weakness, allowing it to check Latios and Rotom Wash, while setting up hazards to make the rain abusers even more difficult to deal with. Rain wasn't just restricted to spamming powerful water moves though. They also had perfectly accurate thunders and hurricanes with which to bombard water resists, making Pokemon like Thundurus and Tornadus just as dangerous as something like Starmie or Latios, whose boosted Surf now meant checking it with Jirachi or Skarmory was out of the question. Also abusing rain were Dry Skin Toxicroak and Rain Dish Tentacruel. The former absorbed opposing water attacks and dished out an assault not stopped at all by Ferrothorn, while the latter was absolutely unkillable and by far the best spinner in the game. It was so good alongside Ferrothorn that Rainstorm emerged as one of the metagame's most powerful team styles. These were the standard ways of abusing rain, but there were many creative instances of using it to good effect. For example, rain boosted Aquatail would allow Swords Dance Garchomp to crush the Skarmory and Gliscor that would normally check it, while Substitute Calm and Jirachi could use Rain to set up against its usual worst nemesis, Heatran. Even Volcarona, a fire type, was fantastic on Rain, abusing Quiver Dance boosted Hurricane and Hidden Power Water to thrash its usual checks. The metagame was such that either one was abusing Rain or using other weather to not be destroyed by Rain. It was usually just too difficult to keep up with Rain's monstrous abusers with a weatherless team, and that's not to say that a few weatherless teams didn't find success, but they were the exception. It helped that Politoed had a good amount of utility, which allowed it to contribute to the team as more than just the required Drizzle Pokemon, as well as being effective at winning Weather Wars. Its typing and bulk were far superior to Ninetales', while Tyranitar and Hippowdon struggled to set Sand up in the face of water moves. Abomasnow was mostly a gimmick, but its weakness to Stealth Rock meant Politoed would generally outlast it as well. Politoed could run a bulky set, which easily spread passive damage through Scald, Burns, and Toxic, while packing longevity with the combination of Leftovers and Protect. This set made it quite resilient against Dugtrio, something Tyranitar could not claim. Dugtrio even fit on Rain to ensure Sun and Sand wouldn't interfere. Politoed could also use Refresh to completely blank Ninetales' attempts to wear it down with Will-O-Wisps, though most players preferred Perish Song as a contingency against various threats like Reuniclus. Politoed was definitely capable of going on the offensive though. Choice Scarf sets were able to check most of the dangerous offensive metagame, most notably Sand Rush Extra Drill, and Choice Specs variants of Politoed dished out tons of damage, as its Hydro Pumps overwhelmed most of the tier's water resist with ease, which allowed something like Azumaro's Aqua Jet to clean up. Black and White 2 introducing Thundurus Therian and Tornadus Therian and Keldeo catapulted Rain to new levels of danger. Tornadus Therian was especially overwhelming with Regenerator, allowing it to blow the opponent away with Hurricane all game long without getting worn down by Stealth Rock, meaning it'd win against even its checks in the long run, to say nothing of how vicious it was alongside Dugtrio. It was also faster than the popular Scarf Tyranitar, which was game-breaking as Scarf Tar was often the team's best check to incarnate Tornadus' Hurricane spam. As such, Tornadus Therian was eventually banned. Its combined attributes were just too difficult to deal with. Keldeo's immense power under Rain alongside its terrific speed tier made it an unmatched cleaner with the Scarf set, as well as a peerless wall breaker with the Spec set, capable of 2-hit KOing even Ferrothorn and Tentacruel. Keldeo narrowly avoided the Banhammer twice, and Politoed's Politoed's Rain was often cited as one of the factors that some thought pushed it over the edge. These two are an example of how even without certain abuses, Rain endured as the metagame's premier threat, replacing those that were banned with different abusers. From the standards of Starmie and Keldeo, to the less common yet no less formidable Gyarados and Toxicroak, to the unusual but not to be underestimated Feraligatr and Jinx, Rain would always be the peak of danger. In conclusion, Drizzle Politoed single-handedly shaped and defined the 5th generation. If your team couldn't handle Rain, it was completely unviable. And to put things in perspective, many successful teams were actually pretty weak to Sun. Politoed was always the single most important Pokemon in the metagame, fueling the best, most dangerous teams around. Many thought Rain was so strong it should be banned, but Politoed has remained and given Black and White its unique identity as the weather generation. Politoed's Drizzle is huge in VGC 2012, with the Rain teams it enables dominating, despite the eternal clash with Tyranitar's Sand, and to a lesser extent, Ninetales' Sun. It had an excellent support move pool, as it could slow down the opposing team with Spread Icy Wind, and it could lock the opponent into a move to be taken advantage of with Encore, and it could even jack up its teammates' already powerful attacks with Helping Hand. With Water Gem or Choice Specs attached, it could drown Tyranitar attempting to contest its reign, though Citrus Berry was also a fine choice for longevity, and Wakan Berry could be a lifesaver against the terrifying Thundurus. These were chosen to support its vicious teammates, such as Ludicolo, and Politoed did it with unmatched consistency that led to its shaping of the metagame. It even used Rain Dance sometimes to ensure it could keep Rain in the face of opposing weather. 2012 isn't too well documented as far as placements goes, but Randy Quayle used Politoed to reach 2nd at the Canadian Nationals, while at Worlds, Santa Ito used it to reach 8th in the Seniors Division, and Matthew Coyle used it to reach 6th in the Masters Division. Politoed continued to do Politoed things in the 2013 metagame, which is far more well documented, and as such we've limited the placements to first placers except for Worlds. Since, trust us, if you want to go check out all the placements we found, just check out the description, since Politoed was used a lot. And I apologize if I butcher any of your names. Paul C used it to win the US Nationals in the Seniors Division. Ben Kilby used Politoed to win the Australian Nationals, while the Italian Nationals saw Matteo G reaching first, and Alberto Gini won the German Nationals with it. Though strangely at Worlds, Politoed unfortunately did not make another top 8 appearance, with Yuki Matsumoto being the highest placing user at 10. But even so, it's clear Politoed was one of Black and White VGC's most important defining Pokemon, and the fact that we had to limit its pre-Worlds placements in order to save time on this video is a testament to that. The 6th generation brought an enormous change. Permanent weather was no more, meaning Politoed's Drizzle only lasted 5 turns, and 8 turns if it was carrying a damp rock. On the plus side, Swift Swim could be used alongside it again, but it wasn't enough to prevent the playstyle from once again becoming considered gimmicky. Politoed was much less effective when it had to set the rain up over and over without any offensive prowess or longevity, since it was required to run a defensive damp rock set, basically being dead weight in most games and just attempting to switch out as quickly as it could come in. However, once Oraz came around, Mega Swampert joined the fray, and it was incredibly difficult to wall for any team lacking Tangrowth or Slowbro, which is to say it plowed through most of the metagame. Tangrowth and Slowbro were also no match for Specs Kingdra, and as such, Rain teams became much less gimmicky. Of course, they were far from being a consistent metagame staple, but they were now worth bringing to the occasional tournament game. As you may have surmised, Politoed didn't see much use in OU, and unfortunately the lower tiers Politoed dropped to, Drizzle wasn't allowed, and thus Politoed was unable to carve out a niche in the lower tier. Without Drizzle, it fell to the newest lowest tier, PU, where it reverted to the generic bulky water it had been pre-Drizzle. It was usable, but bland and unspectacular. It just about never seriously improved the team it was on. There really wasn't much to it. It'd come in, take a hit, go for Scald or Toxic, and not much more than that. It didn't keep anything in check well enough to ever be considered crucial. So sad as it is, if you dropped Politoed from your team, you probably wouldn't miss it. But fear not, despite Rain's new impermanence, the playstyle was still a solid choice in VGC 2014. It was a major boon in messing up the new Mega Charizard Y, and its potentially sun-reliant teammates and Politoed's Helping Hand helped make the already fierce Mega Kangaskhan even fiercer. While offensive sets were solid, Politoed notably managed to strike a great balance in using a minus speed nature to be slower than Tyranitar, and thus have its reign up in a lead matchup against it, but was still crucially faster than the massively dangerous Mega Maw Mawile. Politoed was exceedingly common, which is to be expected since it's basically a requirement for an entire playstyle. So we've limited its placements today to top 2 at regionals and nationals, and then top 8 of worlds. Ino Shakar, aka Human, reached 2nd at the Virginia regionals. Sapphire Birch won the NYU grassroots tournament, and Dane O reached 2nd at the Melbourne regional. Then at worlds, Haruka Narita reached 3rd in the juniors division, and Ian McLaughlin reached 4th in the seniors division. In the masters division, Dane O'Meara reached 8th, and Lee Proverse, aka Osiris VGC, reached 7th. Then VGC 2015 saw new megas enter the picture, most notably Mega Salamence, whose presence Politoed enjoyed as it could potentially be a great asset for Rain teams with its ability to crush Amoonguss. While Rain itself was not too threatened by the opposing Ments, given Politoed's good bulk and various ice moves, as well as the Swift Swimmers outrunning and one-hit KOing the Dragon. Also, Politoed didn't always have to be Rain support for a Rain team, as it could use Perish Song alongside a Trapper like Gothitelle or Mega Gengar in order to feint both opponents' Pokemon in 3 turns regardless of health. And though it wasn't as common as the more easy to use Megas like Salamence and Kangaskhan, the new Mega Swampert was also a fine new Swift Swim abuser. Rain was once again widespread due to how effective it was, so we've again limited placements to top 2. Those were Wolf Glick reaching 2nd at the Philadelphia Regionals, Colin Hare reaching 2nd at the Houston Regionals, Kamran Jahadi reaching 2nd at the San Jose Regionals, Augustin Bordo reaching 2nd at the Argentina Premier Challenge, Morna S reaching 1st at the Gauteng Regionals, Jose Campuzano reaching 2nd and 1st at both of Mexico's regionals, Mark Hansen reaching 2nd at the Washington Regionals, Wolf Glick winning the Massachusetts Regionals, Max Douglas reaching 2nd at the Utah Regionals, Paul Chua reaching 2nd at the Kansas Regionals, and Toller Webb winning the US Nationals. However, at Worlds, the Chalk Core had premiered on the big stage and placed very high, and sadly, Worlds only saw Politoed used by Ryota Otsubo, who reached 25th. But all things considered, Politoed had a fine season regardless. Then in 2016, the restricted Pokemon came down to play, and the existence of Primal Kyogre meant Politoed was out of a job. Unfortunate, but being outclassed by Kyogre is hardly shameful. Rain looked to be fearsome once again in Gen 7 OU, having gotten a significant power boost in the additions of Z-Moves, Tapu Koko, and the mighty Ash Greninja. However, this time it wouldn't be Politoed providing the rain. It was the far superior Pelipper, who had just been gifted Drizzle itself. Pelipper had Roost for longevity, thus allowing it to repeatedly get rain up, U-turn to get its teammates in safely, defog to clear hazards, and for these reasons it was just overall better and basically giving no reason to use Politoed over it. And the lower tiers once again were not having any automatic rain in them, and non-Drizzle Politoed's generic bulky water shtick was no longer good enough for a place in even PU. As a result, it was sadly given that awful dishonor of being untiered, meaning it is not recommended for use in any tier. But unlike singles, Politoed was still quite a decent range setter in 2017 VGC, thanks to its extensive support move pool, notably Encore and Perish Song, both of which Pelipper didn't possess, in addition to its far superior bulk. Not being weak to rock also helped noticeably when facing sand, and Rain as a playstyle was as strong as ever, boasting new additions such as Tapu Koko and Alolan Raichu, in addition to the old standby Swift Swimmers like Ludicolo and now Golduck. Grass types like Tapu Bulu were also excellent on Rain, given their ability to thwart opposing electrics and sand while appreciating the reduction of their fire weakness. Though Rain clashed with Alolan Ninetales' Hail, Torkoal's Sun, and Gigalith's Sand, it was still a consistent, powerful playstyle that saw significant usage. And as such, we're limiting the placements for this to top 8. A Shin Meta reached top 8 at the San Jose Regionals, Gabriel Agati reached 3rd at the Latin American Internationals, the European Nationals saw Tobias Koziski reaching 6th, and Benjamin Tan reached 3rd at the Kuala Lumpur special event. Terrence Dre reached 5th at the Malmo Regionals, Anahi Vicente reached 2nd at the Asuncion special event, Carlos Ruanaro reached 5th at the La Libertad special event, and Nick Navarre reached 4th at the Post-Worlds Memphis Regional. 2018 saw the metagame expand, but Politoed kept chugging along as usual, though now it used the pinch health berries for increased longevity, and this time we've limited its placements to top 4. Felipe Mendez reached 1st at the Chile special event, and 2nd at the Hoppy Max special event. Lisandro Gons reached 3rd at the Mexico special event. Ji-Hoon Ryu reached 1st in the Korean Spring League. Christopher Egan reached 3rd at the Melbourne Regionals. Young King Sun reached 2nd at the Roanoke Regionals, and Benjamin Tan won the Malaysian Regionals and the Singapore special event. Then at Worlds, Carson Confer and Emilio Forbes reached 13th and 2nd respectively. Suffice to say, Politoed got around. Then in 2019, the 2019 metagame had unrestricted Kyogre, and as was to be expected, Politoed disappeared. Except for Ino Shakar reaching 6th with it at the brand Brampton Regionals, as he used Politoed so that he could disrupt other weather without taking up a restricted slot, allowing him to run both Xerneas and Lunala. So props to him for the creativity and for pulling it off. But that said, Politoed still basically doesn't exist in the Kyogre meta, of course. And that's it. So how good was Politoed actually? Well, past its intriguing place in its debut generation UU, it was among the worst generic bulky waters, finding itself kicking around aimlessly in the lower tiers until it got Drizzle in black and white, coming to define everything about the generation as a result, and having influence on the following 2 generations VGCs as well, despite the permanent weather nerf. Overall, Politoed is possibly the best zero to hero story in Pokemon history. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False White Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Politoed? What would you give it to make it a better bulky water type? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. And to vote for next week's Pokemon, be sure to go to the community tab of this channel and comment on the latest post there with the Pokemon that you want to see. That should go up around the same time as this video's release, or a little bit after. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and of course for voting for this Pokemon. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.